Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the U325W-UPT monitor from Sceptre, which is a departure from my regular monitor reviews as this is geared more towards creators and not gamers. Now I'll get into that more as the review progresses, but it will start to make more sense as I get into the specs. Now that's not to say that you can't game on this monitor, because you can, and I'll have a good amount of gameplay footage in this review, but that won't be the main draw here. The U325W-UPT is a 32-inch 4K IPS panel monitor with a 70Hz refresh rate and a 7 millisecond gray-to-gray response time with overdrive. Now, based on that last spec here, you can start to see this isn't geared directly towards gamers with the lower refresh rate and response time. This covers 100% of the sRGB color space with a dynamic contrast ratio of 1,000,000:1. And for the typical brightness here, this is going to be 300 nits, and then the max nits here is going to be 350. The backlight here is rated for 30,000 plus hours. This has anti-flicker technology, and the surface coating has an anti-glare treatment and a 3H hardness. This has two 2-watt speakers, and I'll do a sound test for that in a little bit. And then for physical adjustments, this can only tilt forwards 5 degrees and backwards 15. For those that need more adjustments, you can VESA mount this to a monitor arm, and it has a 100mm by 100mm pattern. For ports, this has two HDMI 2.0, two DP 1.4, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. Inside of the box, you will find the monitor, neck, base, DP cable, user manual, screwdriver, and screws to mount this. Note that you don't get an HDMI cable here, just the DP cable. This does come with a 1-year limited parts and labor warranty also. And let's go ahead and shift over now to the sound test with the camera roughly 3 to 4 feet away from the monitor. So the speakers here are okay, but if you're trying to fill a whole room with sound, these probably aren't going to be the best option here. But if it's just you, maybe one other person, it will definitely suit those needs. Next, let's look at the panel menu. For gaming monitors, I cover more settings that are important, like overdrive, but here I'm just going to be covering the presets and color temperature, which will matter more for content creators. Starting with the presets, you have standard, user, movie, eco, FPS, and RTS. I do find it a little odd that this is geared towards content creators and designers, with there not being an sRGB mode here. I guess that would be standard, but you're not finding that mode labeled here. You're finding gaming modes really labeled here with the FPS and the RTS modes here. Shifting over now to the color, we're going to start with the color temperature first, and you have warm to start, then normal, cool, and user. User allows you to adjust all the different colors here, the RGB colors, but also in the advanced tab, you get to adjust all of those secondary colors as well. So now that I've covered these specs, let's talk about what I like here. And I'm viewing this from a content creator's perspective, as that's what this monitor is geared towards. First is going to be the price, as this is a 32-inch 4K monitor with an IPS panel and speakers coming in at a very affordable price. You can find this for around $250 on Amazon typically, and that's really the market Sceptre has a firm grasp on, which is the budget-friendly monitors that still deliver solid specs. As we shift into this next year here, 2024 is going to be the year of OLEDs, and those just come with a very high price tag that just aren't going to be affordable for most people. They are more of a niche product when it comes to just the overall monitor market. Sceptre delivers value with their monitors, and that is the case here with the U325W-UPT. I personally really like 32-inch monitors, and I've been away from them for my other reviews for a while now, just dealing with different sizes, 27-inch all the way up to 42 inches. This size to me feels like I'm coming back home. I just really like 32-inch monitors. To me, it's just the perfect sweet spot, and everybody has their personal preference. And with this, I think it's just the perfect size for gaming, content creation, and content consumption. Sceptre went with a flat panel here, which makes more sense with this size, as the curve feels best with ultra wides. A subtle curve here would be fine, but flat to me is going to be just as good. When you start going beyond like a 1800R curve, it starts to feel excessive at this size. Again, it just feels like the curve is meant more for those very large ultra wides. Now with this, the colors are super vibrant here, and the higher color space coverage allows more accuracy for basic editing, but this just lists the sRGB color space. So if you work in another color space, just keep that in mind, as it might not suit your needs, or you may need more time to calibrate this. The stand here is solid and makes this feel secure. And although it doesn't have more adjustments, to me this feels better suited to actually sit on one of those elevated box monitor stands, so that you have kind of shelving space underneath the monitor. Now personally, that's something I don't use, but a lot of content creators that deal in tech that I follow do use those, and I can see that being a great pairing with this monitor. So the size, resolution, colors, and price all make this a great choice for content creators and editors on a budget, and although this isn't geared towards gamers, you can for sure game on this. Now, faster paced games like first-person shooters are going to have more ghosting than other games, but if you play slower adventure, RPG, or RTS style games, they're going to do great. You can also use this with consoles, and they play great as well. So it's not going to be as smooth as 120 Hz or higher monitors, but for those who mainly edit and create content that don't want to worry about getting a second monitor to casually game every now and then, this will be a great fit for you. This is also great for consuming content, whether that's streaming apps, YouTube, or social media. One last thing I want to mention here is the text clarity is really good here, and it's not super pixelated. Some people may want to still run ClearType. I don't think most people will need to do that, but overall I think the text here is really good. So it's going to look good in Premiere Pro or Photoshop, and if you write scripts like I do on Google Docs or another writing application, this will perfectly fit your needs as well. Moving on to the negatives here, I'm happy to report I don't have any standout ones, as I judge these monitors based on the audience they are geared towards and the price point they come in at. I do, however, have some gray area things, which are things you may or may not care about, starting with the menu buttons, which are multiple buttons instead of a single button. Personally, I always prefer a single button over multiple buttons, as the multiple buttons just are harder to navigate in my opinion, but I know not everyone will feel the same about that. Next, I think the smarter move for this monitor would have been eliminating the RGB lighting on the back. It's a nice touch, but I think for content creators, they're going to want an extra USB hub on the monitor for just more peripherals and expansion over RGB lighting on the back of the monitor. Last here, the spec breakdown doesn't include other color spaces, and part of my brain thinks it should, since this is geared towards content creators and editors. So knowing the DCI P3, NTSC, and Adobe RGB color spaces would be nice here to help people to know whether or not this is going to be the right monitor for them based off the work that they do. Now, part of that will be limitations to the panel, and I'll have a link for an article that covers DCI P3 to sRGB and the differences in the video description, but I do want to use a quote from that article here. You might be wondering, why don't we just use DCI P3 everywhere if it offers a more extensive color range? Well, that's a great question. While DCI P3 is fantastic for professional and cinematic purposes, sRGB has its advantages for everyday use. By sticking to the sRGB standard, content creators and web designers can ensure that their images, videos, and graphics will look consistent across the majority of consumer devices, which are optimized for sRGB. So my assumption here is that in order to keep this more cost effective, Sceptre chose to stick with the color space that has the most applications for it, as including these other color spaces would most likely drive up the cost if they tried to hit certain parameters for those color spaces to make it more appealing to those that may need it. With that being said, it would still be nice to know what those other percentages are, and I'm sure there's some type of conversion that is definitely beyond my knowledge base here. So with this, it would be nice to see it, but I also get why they didn't. So just keep all of that in mind when you're looking at this monitor. It really is just geared towards that sRGB color space, and for anybody that does edit in that, because it is the one that is going to be most used. And that's going to be it for the gray area. So for this price point and the specs, Sceptre has delivered here with this monitor. And once again, they are providing a solid monitor in a price range that other top-end brands seem to neglect these days, as they focus on these $1,000+ monitors now. So if you're a content creator or editor that deals mainly in the sRGB color space and does some occasional gaming, and you need to stick to a certain budget, then this is an easy recommendation on my part, and I don't think you will be disappointed here. I'll have a link for this in the description if you want to pick it up, and if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section. That's going to wrap this video up. If you like the video, hit the like button for me, as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.